Greetings and salutations, young true believers. So, doubtless by this point in the course, you're probably a bit confused by this whole scientific and realist, scientific anti-realist debate. So, let's define terms. A scientific realist is someone who posits that the truth or the predictive success, if you will, of scientific theories would be impossible if it were not the case that the theoretical particles, entities, right, that science and our best theoretical science, in this case physics, right, posits, if they weren't there, right, there really were, there are no electrons, there are no quarks, there are no protons, they're just useful placeholders for something we know not what, right? Um, Whereas the scientific anti-realist, or the instrumentalists as they're also known, would argue, look, um, it would be great if we were actually really describing the character of the universe, right? The nature of the universe. Um, but it's very much a fair question to ask. Do our theories really get at the way the world is independently of our senses? What might be called the metaphysical thesis. The world. You can find it here on page 160 of our text. The view that the world is a definite and mind-independent structure. Um, and Longbottom, or excuse me, Rowbottom is his name, and Silos, they go back and forth over this. But the view ultimately comes down to this, in my estimation, right? Um, what what is the possibility? What are the possibilities that human beings can bracket off or somehow get around, if you will, right? Circumvent, transcend their sensory limitations and their intellectual limitations. And moreover, that we can bracket off the historical and cultural factors that play into our understanding, that factor into our understanding, I should say, of the external world. We can't do that. We're creatures of a time and a place, and we have a finite sensory apparatus. We have a finite intellectual capacity. That's ultimately what this debate boils down to. Can we overcome those limitations and describe the world as it is in of itself? Well, again, a scientific realist is going to point to the success of theories and say that these theories could not possibly be as successful as they are in making predictions, right? Not just making predictions, as Silos is quick to point out, but describing the way the world is, right? If we were wildly off base about what's out there. And I agree, we can't be wildly off base, but the question that I would raise is, are we really describing the world as it is in and of itself? Um, we are creatures that look at things from, again, a cultural perspective. It would be interesting, and hopefully someday we can do this, right? Who knows if it's still even reasonably possible. We meet, intelligent extraterrestrials, and we begin swapping notes about biology and chemistry and physics and all the rest of the sciences, and see how closely we overlap. Um, but I don't think it would be a surprise to any of us if we looked at the notes at the end of the day and saw that things didn't entirely line up, right? Now, again, what does all this mean for us in theory, right? Not in theory, but in practice, right? Well, it means if I were consistently wrong in my estimations, my predictions about the world, right? Then I would drink antifreeze with no anticipation, no reason to expect bad effects, right? That would be a catastrophe. Um, if I were, again, consistently wrong in my predictions, right, then I would forget to put one foot in front of the other and tumble down the stairs, right? Um, it can't be the case that we're grossly wrong in interpreting the world, but it is the case that we invariably do interpret the world, and that's the key. That's the thing that cannot be circumvented. It's the thing that must be uh, reiterated. It's not that we're getting at the world; it's we're interpreting the world, right? we don't occupy the God's eye view, right? Or what Donna Haraway once called the God trick. We're incapable of doing that. We can't be wholly objective. Um, it doesn't mean, again, that we should conclude science doesn't isn't useful, right? Science is of immense use to us. The question is, again, is are we really describing the world as it is in and of itself, or are we interpreting it as best we can, getting a useful approximation from a human perspective?